Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Podcast Daily. Hope you had a great Memorial Day weekend. It is time for Bill Landis to tell us what he's thinking. Yes, we have some new content coming, fresh content from the Ohio State coaching staff, expecting a media day with those gentlemen. So we're going back. We're treating it like midseason, and Bill's just going to give me all the questions that he's going to ask that are on his mind to the assistant coaches.
I am not in midseason form.
Okay.
I do not have questions at the ready, like front of mind this time of year. Usually,
You're lying. You're lying.
No. I mean, I have them. You know what I mean? I just kind of feel like I'm not. You know, it feels like I'm not on my A game. I wasn't. I feel like we need some build up to this. I need to gain some momentum before we go into a media session. We haven't had one in so long.
That's right.
I think. Yeah. I mean. At the risk of being a meme, I suppose, like my questions are on the offensive line. Some of the stuff we talked about last week, right, about the center position with Justin Fry and whether or not Matthew Jones gets a look there. I think that's probably a relatively short conversation as we discussed, but there's more to it. It's like I think we need a debrief on like Carson Hinsman and what Justin Fry thought of his play in the spring. Whether or not they think Vic Cutler is any closer to like actually being in that battle, because I didn't really feel like he was in the spring. I sort of like he was playing there, but I didn't really feel like he was pushing Carson Hinsman all that much. And then, you know, what do they expect out of Jacob James now that he is, you know, presumably on the mend or close to it? Maybe what's that timeline like? There's a lot there, and he can get into tackles and with Josh Simmons and what they expect from him. Does Josh Fryer stay on the left side? Do they give a look at Simmons on the left side and move Fryer back to right? Like I think I could spend the entirety of the session we're there talking with Justin Fry just about the pieces on the offensive line and how we could potentially move them around, but also too maybe about like just sort of the vibe of that group because I think it is just one addition, but I do feel like adding Josh Simmons, who certainly has some strides to make to become a little bit better of a player than he was last year. I just really felt like that settled things down quite a bit. So I'm wondering if Justin Fry kind of feels the same way. So the thing that is chief on my mind is like a general temperature check on everything involving the offensive line.
Yeah, and then that addition also, you could make a case that it was the biggest one of the entire offseason, including pre-spring for Ohio State, but certainly it changes the landscape post-spring. And one of the ways that this works, which I do like that Ohio State has structured the media throughout camp, is like going by positions and not scrambling it around. Like you don't really know who you're going to get on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis. But the only downside to that approach is like you could talk to one position group after, you know, 2 or 3 workouts and then never really get an update. You said you wanted a debrief on Carson Hinsman. Some of that in-depth stuff from Justin Fry we weren't going to get because he was about in the midway point of spring, really sort of when Carson Hinsman started to elevate, it seemed like, or get comfortable in that role. So that applies to all positions because the last week I don't think there were there wasn't anybody left. There was just Ryan Day before the spring game and then only a couple players afterwards. So there is a lot of ground to cover. I maybe should have teed that up to you beforehand. As a more general way into this, but I just like hearing your questions, and I knew you'd start with the offensive line anyway.
Yeah, I am predictable, but you are right. I was trying to remember when we talked to the offensive line. It was very early on. Like they weren't the first group, but they might have been like that first week back after spring break. Maybe is that when we talked to them? Like that was a long time ago. That was like 3 months, 2 months ago now. So it's been a minute since we've gotten to pick Justin Fry's brain and. He is not. I think he's been like hesitant to get super specific on things since he's been here, which is like fine. Coaches are that way. So I maybe am not certain how enlightening those conversations might be. But even if we can like peg down some positional stuff, I think that's worthwhile discussion with Justin Fry as well.
Did you see that picture of Donovan Jackson?
Yeah, I did. He looks like an American gladiator. Like that dude is yoked, and he's not like he's sort of always been that way. He's not. How do I say this delicately? He's not on the. You know, if you see some offensive linemen who are built more like me than they are, you know, bodybuilders sometimes, and yeah, That was impressive. I don't know what that man's been up to over the last couple of months, but he looks good.
Yeah. So if DeJuan Jones was Thanos, like that picture of Donovan Jackson looked like Juggernaut from Deadpool 2. Like, I don't know what is going on. I thought it must have been some trick of photography or something like that. How did that happen in the last 2 months? I don't know, but he was already big, and now he just looks like somebody was inflating him like a bike tire.
Yeah, maybe he can just play all 5 positions. We don't have to worry about it. Just throw him
Yeah.
out there by himself. We'll take them all on.
All right, we've covered the offensive line then, Bill. That's like everybody expected us to start that way. We did. Where else should we move?
I feel like we're gonna end up doing like mini position previews for every group in this episode. I don't. Where would I want to go next?
Well, let's just make it one question then. Like, or the 3 questions that you want to have answered from any position. We won't go through all of them.
Yeah. I think maybe I want to know more about safety and how that picture is coming together for Perry Eliano. And he doesn't have to have answers now. Obviously, we're not even into June yet, and they have a lot of on-field workouts, and then obviously camp to get through before that depth chart needs to be settled. But you have the discussions we've had about the guys that started in the spring. Are they actually the starters? Like, are they there because they have seniority? What did they do with those opportunities? Like, what does Jihad Carter do now when he comes back healthy? There's just so many moving parts there that, like, I have opinions on what me personally would like to see it look like, but those don't really mean anything. Like, I want to know what Perry Eliano is feeling about how he can move those pieces around the board if he sees a way for like all 6 or 7 of those guys who are kind of in the mix to find roles and play for the defense. So like, it's a really important position, right? It is the safety driven defense after all, and there's good options. Yeah, there's good options there, but they need to get it right. Like, I don't think it's something that you can just sort of go into the season and we'll say like, oh, we'll see how it goes. I don't know, maybe it can because of the way the schedule sets up, but they have some stuff to get figured out there, and I don't know if they got any closer to that in the spring because of some of the injury stuff that was happening there.
That will definitely be really informative and interesting, but it'll also still be subject to change in August. I feel like one of the biggest benefits that we had from the way spring camp was set up with the number of viewing opportunities and the open scrimmages that we saw is like, I don't know if people would have believed it if we said, well, the starters right now are Cam Martinez, Lathan Ransom, and Josh Proctor. Like, if we hadn't seen that be the case throughout, and that was just like the hearsay, like, oh, well, you're just hearing about the veterans then, and they're not talking about the younger guys. Like, the fact that we saw that really added some credence to that. Now, it can change in August, and when it comes to Sonny Styles, it may well do that. I don't know. We'll see. Josh Proctor had that job until he missed a tackle in the first drive of the game against Notre Dame and then lost it. So those things aren't set in stone, but that's what we've seen so far. And it will be interesting to hear directly from Perry Eliano about that and what went into those decisions. At the end, as you mentioned, Jihad Carter was hurt. So Cam Martinez was really the only option to work as that first team nickel, but he was already doing that anyway.
And there's a lot there, like, and we haven't done the safety position group breakdown yet, so we'll probably repeat ourselves when we do. But like, there was a lot of discussion about moving corners to play that nickel spot, or at least cross training them so that they could be ready, I guess, maybe in the event of an emergency, perhaps just to have more of that body type and skill set available, because that's not really what Jihad Carter is. He's more of a bigger kind of pure safety who plays a nickel spot. He's not a corner who's playing safety. So they were like working Jair Brown there. I don't like, is that a potential area for him to get on the field? Did he show them anything? And you mentioned Sonny Styles, right? Like I found the quote unquote streamlining of Sonny Styles, like a bit nebulous, I think, in the spring. Like, what exactly does that mean? I think we have some idea of what it means with some of the like the bigger nickel packages, but I'm wondering if anything happened over the course of those 15 practices, or like with the benefit of some time removed from practice, if Perry feels at all that like Sonny could be ready for more than that, whatever that vision was, could it perhaps be expanded already by this point?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the other caveat that's worth throwing out there. There's a long time between April 15th and the first Saturday in September, and twice as many practices available in August. So that just because those springs were encouraging for the veterans and they had a chance to prove it, like that's a lot of competition that's still ahead. And Sonny Styles is more than capable of closing that gap. It appears. We'll see. So that's 2 down.
2 down. So I'm on the spot for one more, huh?
I'll give you 2. Offensive line doesn't count. That was mandatory.
That's just a gimme. Yeah. I was going to combine, I guess, kind of 2 different positions into one thought. With the thought is more about like young players finding roles, and it's Jelani Thurman and Carnell Tate and what is actually realistic for them. And I suppose if you wanted to lump in Brandon Innes with Carnell Tate, we could. Like, we haven't seen Brandon. We're just making assumptions about a 5-star guy, showing up and being good, which I think is a safe assumption at that position. But like, what's real? Like, what's realistic now that, especially receiver, like Emeka and Julian are back or will be back, and Xavier Johnson at some point will be back. Like, I don't know. He asked Brian Hartline about like rotation stuff, and I think sometimes he gets a little PO'd about it because he's just like, "What? Like, we're good. When we go out there, we'll be good. It's fine. What do you care about who's playing and how many snaps are playing?" But I am curious about what is out there for Carnell and what is out there for Jelani. Jelani, I think, is a more difficult route, probably, given all the things we've discussed about the tight end position. But I don't know that we don't. Keenan Bailey has been around, but we don't know, like, we don't have any body of work to assume how he would approach a situation like that. So maybe there's something to get into with him about sort of his mindset on playing young guys compared to maybe some people who have coached before him.
Yeah, I wonder if he's more willing to do that because he's younger. He sees the value of like being given responsibility at an early age. We're sort of playing too much armchair psychologist and not football coach if it gets to that point. But I think everybody in the Woody recognizes the potential that Jelani Thurman has. Now, it's always been married, and we've talked about this over and over with the developmental nature of that position. But I feel like Keenan Bailey, compared to a more old school approach from Kevin Wilson, may be more open to that. In the way that Ohio State likes to manage it, whether that was Urban Meyer before or Ryan Day now, is like, let the position coaches dictate the workload and the reps until it becomes a problem. So I don't know what that will mean, but I think there's a more realistic probability of Jelani Thurman helping than I would have considered for any other freshman tight end that I've witnessed in the past.
Yeah, I mean, because he's that different. So I am trying to like tread cautiously with how we talk about him, because I think it's clear that you and I are really excited about what he could be, but I don't want to oversell it and then have people be like, "Oh, you guys were talking a big game about Jelani that he never played." It's like that also was on the table because of a lot of different things. Ohio State doesn't always play the young guys a ton, and tight end is a difficult position to play when you're that young. I understand that, but if anyone was ever going to break the mold, I guess it would be him. Whether or not he does it, it remains to be seen. But I would love to get some more insight from Keenan Bailey on that topic, and then also from Brian Hartline on the freshman receivers and what could potentially be on the table for them this year. And then I guess quarterbacks, right? They don't have a starting quarterback yet.
No,
so
they don't. Berm named one last week on Freaky Friday.
He sure did. Yeah, I mean, that's the assumption, right? And maybe that's the question. Like, I think everyone is operating under the assumption that it will be Kyle McCord, and like, no one's going to say that when we talk to them on Tuesday. But is there a way to approach that conversation that shines a little light on, like, yeah, like there's a little bit of a lead there. There's something going on with Kyle that Devin Brown needs to close the gap on before this is like truly a competition going into the summer. I don't know. Maybe that's too much wishful thinking to think we'll get that kind of insight on the quarterback competition, but we do need one. We need to figure out kind of where Ryan Day is and where Corey Dennis is, and probably too where Brian Hartline as the offensive coordinator is on how that battle was coming out of the spring and how they see it moving into the summer. Once Devin is able to get back to throwing, which should be sometime soon, I think.
Yeah, that'll be one of my favorite parts of this assistant coach media days. All the, backdoor sneaky ways that people will phrase questions to try and get somebody to slip up and say that Kyle McCord or Devin Brown is the starter. Like, but one of those guys organizing more of throwing sessions. Have you felt like one is a better leader? Do you guys do you like him? Do you like one more than the other?
I do wonder, like, Ryan Day did not really go down any road that would have been him like comparing Kyle and Devin during the spring. And I understand the sensitive nature of a quarterback battle in today's day and age. But now that we've gotten like past the transfer portion of things, and I mean, I think it'd be shocking to everybody if Ohio State didn't have both those guys on the roster throughout the entirety of the 2023 season. Like, does that open a door for a little more candid conversation about where things are? Probably not, but maybe. I'm hopeful that it might, now that we've passed like a pretty important juncture in the college football calendar, and you can feel reasonably confident that they'll both be sticking around.
Was one other like pretty significant addition with Tywone Malone coming in. So you know, if Larry Johnson, you know, can dive into that and a second chance at that recruitment, it did seem like Ohio State felt early, like even in the middle of spring camp, that it was going to have to add a defensive tackle. And it did so. It felt like it needed more depth and more ability to roll through there. And thought maybe like Hero Canoe had alleviated some of that by the end of camp, but you could tell like once this availability and opportunity was there for Ohio State, they didn't want to miss it. That was really that was the second defensive tackle that they pursued that had a visit starting in March. So that was a priority, and then they landed it. But why? You know, that Larry Johnson didn't necessarily talk about that, because I'm trying to remember. I think he said he still felt like, now I remember, he said that the depth at defensive tackle he felt better about than defensive end, which I thought was quite strange. But that, you know, that was maybe in the middle of camp or towards the start of it. And Kenyatta Jackson hadn't exploded yet. Jack Sawyer was just, you know, moving back to full-time defensive end. Didn't know what was going to happen with Caden Curry. There was the argument going on about the Jack spot, and he had, you know, some proven veterans, that three at the top. But, you know, I don't know that Ohio State can't survive with just, or was unlikely maybe to survive with just Ty Hamilton, Tyleik Williams, and Mike Hall there that they could count on at the top.
Yeah, I think you know, we talked about it, right? Like, I think we all felt better about that defensive tackle position coming out of the spring than maybe we thought we would, based on some of the stuff we saw from Hero Canoe, and like even Jada McKenzie's ability to, I don't know, give him like 10 snaps a game maybe. But I don't quibble with adding somebody there, especially someone with the upside of Tywone Malone. Like, that was a former top 100 player, and the thing I'm really curious about with him, and I think like Larry might be able to get into a little more from a technical standpoint, is that Tywone was a 3-4 defensive end at Ole Miss, but he's a defensive tackle. So like, what is now entering a world where he's going to get to go up against guards and centers on every snap, as opposed to going up against tackles on every snap? Like, what does that unlock for him? Because I think the answer could be quite a bit. So that will be an interesting conversation to kind of dive into what he can provide for the program, because I think he did not play a ton at Ole Miss and was not super productive, but the traits as a high school player and the upside that everyone saw in him, I think could mean that he is kind of an instant impact player for them if it clicks right. Yeah,
I mean, it wouldn't be a surprise if the position fit is why he wasn't productive, or lack of fit there. I mean, we've seen many times Larry Johnson unlock potential for somebody who has had to play outside against tackles and then take that skill set and make life miserable for guards and centers. We'll see if that happens. That's down the road a bit.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Feels like manna from heaven.
Back in August, baby. Let's do it.
And then we'll get to wait again for several more months. But let's enjoy this while we can. We'll have full coverage of that with some Snappy Jays. We have Roosters coming with the Horseshoe Lounge, and then another full week. I promise at some point we will pick up the conversation again about the tackles. But it wasn't going to be today, and it might not be tomorrow. But it will be soon enough so that Bill can get back to just focusing on the offensive lineman. Either way, appreciate you joining us this morning for the Podcast Daily. We'll be back again with a lot more content, and then back right here for a Podcast Daily tomorrow. We'll see you then. Thanks for joining us.